Welcome to episode 10 of the JOBCAST, the Employment Support Team's podcast aimed at helping you build the skills and confidence to find work. I'm Francesca.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Demetra.
And this month we're joined by a very special guest, Alice, who's a relationship manager at Working Families. And the reason Alice is joining us is because the 11th to 15th of October is National Work-Life Week. So welcome, Alice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Cool. So to give everyone listening a little bit of background, National Work-Life Week is an annual campaign by Working Families, and the idea is to get the nation talking about workplace wellbeing and work-life balance, and we thought this would make a brilliant theme for this month's podcast. So we're going to be talking about, in quite a bit more detail, how to have a healthy work-life balance, but also for those of you who are job searching, how to kind of maintain that balance of job search and everyday life. So yeah, we'll get right into it. So Alice, you're probably the best person to ask with this, but what exactly is work-life balance?
So I think it is about making sure that work is the undertaking that we do, where we go out and we're earning our money and we're interacting with our colleagues and we're doing the function of whatever that job is, and our life is everything else around it. Now, if we think about the last 18 months, where the challenges of maintaining work and still living our lives has come into the sharpest focus that I think it has ever done, it's about making sure that there is separation between those two things. And if we consider our worlds now, so I'm currently talking to you from my front room, and I'm very privileged in the fact that I've got space where I can set up a desk and I can close that door at the end of my working day. But I have a mobile which goes everywhere with me because it's in my back pocket, reminding me about all of the things I need to be doing. So switching off from that and saying goodbye to my emails and goodbye to all the diary invitations and activities that are related to my job is actually quite challenging. So getting good work-life balance is working within your team and across your colleagues and saying, right, I've got all of these responsibilities, because ultimately all of us have, okay? Whether that's the triathlon you're training for, whether that's your mum who you do your shopping for once a week, whether that's my children who I'm going to be going and collecting a little bit later on this afternoon. These are all things that are part of our lives and part of our existence, and COVID has brought that into complete focus in the last 18 months. And we've got jobs where it's relatively easy or easier to have work-life balance because I am on my laptop and I'm at this screen and I can close it and I can walk away. But if you're in one of those more frontline opportunities, so you're working in a supermarket or you're part of the NHS, or perhaps, you know, you're packing in a warehouse, for example, some people will be listening to this and thinking, right, well, how do I manage to get flexibility and work-life balance in my world? So it's about thinking about the types of jobs that those are, how they can be flexible to ensure that those individuals get work-life balance. So whether that's part-time contracts that fit with their other commitments, whether that's a term time only contract so that you've actually got that freedom and flexibility to work around your children in the school holidays, for example. There's lots of different ways that we can ensure we achieve this, dependent on who you are and where you are actually within your work and career life stage at this point in time.
Cool.
There's lots of food for thought there, really.
Yeah, definitely. That's a much more thorough definition than I would have been able to give them. So thank you so much. Yeah, I think that the key thing there really is it's about that, you know, boundaries and making sure that work is work to live, not live to work, and all of those kind of cliche lines that you hear, but they're all true, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. It's when you were talking, something that I was really sort of deep thinking about was two things actually. One was about the Path project, which both Dan and I work on, so supporting people with perinatal mental health, and the work that we are undertaking at the moment to work with employers around some family friendly recommendations. So some of those, it's not just about, you know, setting up a really nice space for breastfeeding or whatever, but actually it's about allowing that flexibility with start and finishing times, or, you know, actually for it being okay for somebody to have a space that they can go and have a conversation even and check in on their partner, or, you know, just little things. We're not talking about really big things. So that was one thing that I was thinking about and thinking, oh, actually there's lots that we can do to integrate. But I also a while ago we had the project for the workplace wellbeing project, which was kind of helping employers to really think about what they can do, and the one thing that I kept coming up against was employers were saying we haven't got money to spend and do lots of big things, and actually my role was to try and just encourage them to think about looking at things in a different way. It's not about throwing thousands of pounds to it, it's about creating just something that makes somebody feel like they're valued, but also allowing people to have that time. So one of the employers, who shall remain nameless, set up this beautiful wellbeing room, and it was stunning. I had one meeting with them, and they'd set up this room, and there was blankets on this beautiful sofa. They had colouring, so mindfulness colouring. They had books. They had a CD player and this massive collection of music. Not all kind of, you know, Wales and sort of what the singing bowls and things, but actually, you know, there was jazz, there was classical, there was so much. And basically what they kept saying was, if there's something that isn't here that you want, either tell us and we'll find it and we'll put it in, or donate it. You know, this is your room, you make of it what you want. And people were able to go in there, they were able to use it as a prayer space, they were able to use it as a quiet space. I think they did a small amount of yoga in there. It wasn't a massive room, but they could certainly get a couple of people in there. And it was really multi-purpose, but ultimately what really struck a chord with me was that it was such a calm place, and it literally cost them nothing, because they just pulled together stuff and then asked staff to add what they wanted, and it just allowed people to be able to have 10-15 minutes downtime. Made such a difference.
And I think, just picking up on that, you're so right. You know, things don't need to cost a lot of money to make change, and our focus is always to get people working within their teams, because we've all got a part to play in this, right? So I'll use myself as an example. You know, when the pandemic first hit, I was shopping for my mum because she didn't feel safe going outside, and completely understand that. You know, she was basically being told to stay at home because of her age profile. Now, we all probably remember with, you know, quite unpleasant experiences what it was like shopping in those early weeks and months of the pandemic, you know, when there was not much on the shelves and it was quite challenging. But ultimately it took a lot of time. You know, as a family, we weren't prepared to take a priority slot, because I could go there and I could stand in the line, and however long that took. But actually that was pulling me away from my work, and also it was pulling me away from my childcare that I had to do. So, you know, what we were doing on a sort of weekly basis within our team was having a discussion. Right, okay, how's everybody doing today? What are our objectives looking like? How well are we progressing towards them? Who needs a little bit of extra support? So we were completely flexing and changing, and it was on a weekly, sometimes daily, to be honest, basis, to make sure that we each felt supported during, you know, what was an exceptionally challenging time. Now, we've always worked in this way. It was like that before, and it's absolutely even more like that now. But the well-being piece is so important. So on a beautiful day like today, it's doing one of your calls, you know, chatting on the phone rather than sitting on a Teams chat as we are right now. You know, it's deciding in that lunch break to go, right, I'm going to get outside and I'm going to breathe some fresh air, and I'm going to remove myself from this working space, which we probably did a lot more of, frankly, before we were all working from our front rooms. And I think that, just going back to your sort of perinatal mental health piece, that is huge. But again, it doesn't have to be anything massive. You know, giving that returning mum coming into work, giving them a buddy, somebody who's been through that, who's walked back through that front door after 6, 9, 12 months leave, sat them down and said, let's just have a cup of tea. It's hot, there's a biscuit, there's no baby crying, let's just sit and have a cup of tea. That doesn't cost anything. It's a bit of time out of the workday, but ultimately that person's going to feel hugely more supported and ready for the environment that they're going to be facing than if they just had to make that journey by themselves. So it's working in the team, and it's thinking, you know, as broadly as possible about the ways in which staff can feel and be supported. And a really great way to do that is to ask them, but also to showcase and role model your own behaviours. You know, so we've had CEOs from our employer organisations, you know, taking phone calls while they're managing their kids around the supermarket, and that just normalises it, doesn't it? We're all doing it on the sly, like, oh yeah, I've just quickly nipped out because I'm out of my toilet rolls and I need another bag of sugar. But then it normalises it, and you breathe and you go, that's okay, I can do that too.
Yeah, definitely. I think conversation, it's communication. It's not even about conversation. Sometimes people don't feel able to vocalize what they're struggling with, or what they need help with, or how they need help. Sometimes they don't even know, do they? But it's about ensuring that you're always accessible. So, you know, I know that, like, last year, particularly on top of the pandemic, was a really difficult year for myself personally, and actually what got me through it was my team, my colleagues, my manager, and my family. And, you know, and it was, nobody did anything, you know, massively unusual or whatever else. It was the fact that I knew that if I was having a rough day, I didn't even have to say anything, people would just know, and then I could just offload, or they'd take me for a mug of hot chocolate or whatever, you know, and that's what was really important, and that certainly helped with my well-being during a time that I just was being pulled in so many different directions. And I think also it goes back to that well-known phrase, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say, actually today's a rough day and I'm struggling and I just need a little bit of TLC. Sometimes, you know, it's just a chocolate bar. I've been into, this is, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I was in a petrol station and this poor woman behind the counter copped it. I don't know what she'd done, but anyway, the guy in front of me was very, very unhappy, and was yelling at her, and he paid and then like stomped off, and I picked up a bar of chocolate, paid for my petrol and the bar of chocolate, and then I just gave the bar of chocolate back to her and said, I think you might need this today, just because actually it felt like a nice thing. And it's those random just little random acts of kindness, isn't it?
So that's some good discussion there. And what advice would you kind of give if somebody's sort of thinking, you know, I need to focus on my work-life balance, I need to just take that bit more time for myself? What advice would you kind of give to strike up that initial conversation and start thinking about that initially?
So I think there's some real practical tools that you can actually do within your workplace. So first of all, it's diarising the days and hours that you work and getting your teammates to do that as well, because it's frustrating when you can't get hold of people, right? And, you know, we're a fully flexible organisation. I think there's very few of us who are on completely full-time contracts. So trying to get hold of somebody, you know, we do just go into diaries and check and make sure that they're available. So that's a way that you can kind of structure your day and say to yourself, right, it's 4:30 now, I'm finished, I'm back in at 8 or whatever time it is, but that's my day. I think it's having something on your email signature, if you work in that way, that says, you know, I'm working flexibly, I'm not available right now, I don't expect you to reply outside of your hours. Again, that role modelling piece, right? So we're saying, I'm not wanting to hear from you at 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. tonight, unless that's when you're choosing to work. Okay, so that's the whole sort of team and I think communications piece. I think in terms of actually starting that conversation, you know, within your team discussions, hopefully if you're having those on a weekly, monthly basis, you can actually just put that forward, whether that's, you know, at the end as part of another bit of business, or whether you can actually ask to be part of that agenda and say, look, you know, I want to have a really frank and open discussion about how we work this better. But I think from a personal perspective, we all know the things that help us get through the day, right? We know that good diet, prioritising sleep, taking some exercise. It sounds really challenging when every day is a struggle, but ultimately those are the things that do make us feel better and have an impact. So it's ensuring as well that you put that time in. Now, I know if I don't put an appointment in to go for a run, it never happens. But it's figuring out what works well for you. Again, getting a buddy on board, whether that's a work colleague or whether it's somebody outside of work, and saying, right, can we make sure that we talk about this? Okay. But the other really, really key thing for me is it's closing off your day. Right, and you don't need to talk to anybody about that. So my schedule is, I finish down my emails because I can't stand having like a bulging inbox the following morning. I write my to-do list, I close my laptop and I completely turn it all off. I don't let it sit there on standby. And then I am fortunate that I do have a separate room, but I close that door and I do not go back into that room until the following morning. So whether you pick up the laptop and you place it somewhere different, or you put it in a bag so you don't see it until the next morning when you take it back out again, it's all these little cues that just remind you, right, okay, work is done now. I think in those roles where they're more front facing and there's a bigger kind of challenge there, I guess, because you still have to show up and you still have to attend. I think with those types of positions, it's having those conversations with your colleagues and saying, right, okay, hands up, I'm happy to share. Life's a bit challenging right now. I need some help. Could we have the roster on this day of the week because it really helps me out? Can we actually talk about shift swapping so that if I am having a really challenging day because of my mental health, we've mentioned that already on this podcast, that I can actually, I've got that option available to me. It's thinking about all the different ways in which you can make work for you, because it should be working for everybody ultimately.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, that's great. And so a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, they'll find themselves in a position where they're thinking about going back to work, they're looking for work. So I think it's worth just noting that actually when you're job searching, it's important to have that balance as well. So put it out to everyone, any ideas for sort of that work life or job search life balance, things that can be done?
I'm trying to think how many previous roles it is, but I used to actually support long-term unemployed back into work, so I know how challenging it is, and I know how difficult that transition can be, and also all the additional life admin stress that comes with that. If you're currently in receipt of benefits, if you're currently in receipt of housing support, etc. So firstly, I get it and I hear you. It is really, really hard. I think some of the key things that I was thinking back to that I was used to say when I was helping these individuals is, and I've mentioned it already, it's diarising. Okay, so you almost have to think to yourself, right, I'm diarising my times for my job search, and if that maybe links or fits into the hours or the amount of time you'd be actually working, or that you're working towards, because it's good to build up, isn't it? Then great. Find a workplace to do this job searching. So obviously the libraries are fantastic because you can access computers there if you don't have that at home, or if you're struggling to access internet and things like that, or a different space. So whether that's buddying up with somebody, I'm sure at the council there you've probably got projects and spaces where people can actually access that type of thing as well. Because again, it's that removal from being in the house where you've probably spent quite a lot of your time in the last year and a half, and actually having that separation. Do check the websites as well when you're actually looking to apply for work. I think so many of them now are being much more open and using language that invites a conversation around flexible working. Everybody in the UK has the right to request flexible working after 26 weeks of employment, so please ensure that you understand that as well when you're making your applications. But I think it's also, and I mean, I'm a real kind of pen and paper girl, right? I love to look back on things, and I've already talked about my to-do list, which is never written up on my computer, it's always in a notepad. But having like a job search notebook and pen, literally, and that's people are probably going to be listening to this and thinking, God, she's ancient, you know, you're there doing all your Google spreadsheets and everything. But when we think about, you know, you might have one week where you've applied for 10 jobs and there might be another week where there's only 2, but what you want to be doing is sort of having a funnel approach. So going back through, right, okay, those 10 jobs that I applied from last week, have I heard back from them? What's the situation? You'll probably have loads of different logins for different job portals and things that you have to be looking at. Have that all in one place so that it's not stressing you out that you've put it on a post-it note and that was on the fridge and now it's been put in the trash, right? So you have to take ownership of this process, that it doesn't own you, because I think when it becomes, you know, when it moves to becoming overwhelming and it's harder to manage, then that's when it becomes much more difficult. You know, the barriers start to go up even more, don't they? One of the other things I saw individuals do when they were in this place is they dressed for their job search, which I thought was fantastic. It's that whole thing, isn't it? You have your work outfits, or certainly I do. I still lay them out, you know, the night before, so I don't have to be faffing about it in the morning, because I've normally got 101 other things to be doing. But people would come, because I used to run job searching clinics, and they would come in their job search outfit, and I just thought that was brilliant, because again, it's another sort of indicator to yourself that it's that separation between work and life, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. So there's several things that popped into my head whilst you were talking. So obviously for any under 25s, we've got the Young Adults Employment Hub that you can just rock up to. It's a walk-in service and it's open from 10 till 5 Monday to Friday in the Central Library. All you have to do is follow the floor stickers that are there, and there'll always be somebody there who can help you either job search or just help you just get into a good routine. We've also got work clubs across the city, so all of those details are on Access Southampton, and I know that the web address will be underneath the podcast. And also thinking about what you were saying about kind of having that notebook with all of your logins and everything else. I mean, that's something very much that we teach on our employability courses, isn't it? And so we've got employability courses running throughout the year, and it's about setting up people's own routines. It's not about saying you have to do it like this. It's about saying, right, this is what you need to achieve, so how is it going to work for you? So yeah, so those are the things I was thinking of.
Yeah, really important things to think about, not just in work, but before you go and find work, actually setting those positive routines, the good habits, setting those beforehand. I think that's really, really good points.
Yeah, and I love my to-do list, although mine is on a post-it note on my laptop, but it works. I love a good to-do list, so you know, just helps.
Brilliant. Well, Alice, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really great conversation, and yeah, find out a little bit more about the work that Working Families do and National Work Life Week. We'll put all of those links in the description for everybody. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on, and happy to pop back whenever you want another catch up.
Brilliant, thank you so much.
So that's all for October's episode. So make sure that you join us next month for more employment related discussion. Next month we're going to be having a look at the Festival of Learning Month, so looking at all of the variety of adult learning and employability opportunities available in Southampton.
Brilliant, thank you for listening.